There are moments in life when silence feels like the easy choice. It's comfortable, it's safe. But what if I told you that staying silent in the wrong situations can cost you your peace, your purpose, and even your integrity? Words, when spoken with courage and clarity, have the power to shape destiny, not just your own, but others as well. And when silence takes their place, it can leave behind a void where truth, justice, or connection should have stood. Today, we uncover 5 pivotal moments where silence is not an option. These aren't just ordinary instances, they're tests of character, of resolve, and of what it means to live with wisdom and strength. Are you ready to face them? Number 1. When injustice demands a voice, expanded. Injustice is not always as blatant as an act of violence or a crime against the state. Sometimes it presents itself in smaller, quieter forms. It can show up as the colleague who constantly takes credit for your work, or the friend who belittles you in private yet pretends to care in public. It could be the system that systematically disregards the rights of certain groups, or the unfair policy that oppresses those without power to challenge it. In these situations, silence is more than mere passivity. It is a form of acceptance. To a true Stoic, silence in the face of injustice is unacceptable. The Stoic doesn't stand idly by when wrong is being done, whether to themselves or others. Marcus Aurelius in Meditations wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." This statement speaks not just to personal virtue, but to a broader call for integrity in the face of adversity. It is easy to remain silent and allow the injustice to persist, but that silence feeds the very thing we ought to be fighting against. The Stoic philosophy teaches us that it is our duty to act, not because we are seeking vengeance or creating conflict, but because our actions can set the course for justice. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the capacity to act despite it. Seneca told us, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." The fear we feel when faced with standing up against wrongdoing is often far greater than the consequences we face in reality. A critical aspect of Stoicism is understanding the difference between what we can control and what we cannot. We cannot control the actions of others, but we can control how we respond to them. When we witness injustice, remaining silent is to choose inaction. Speaking out, however, allows us to take responsibility for the situation. By doing so, we align ourselves with the Stoic virtue of justice, which asks us to do what is right, regardless of the personal consequences. The Stoic approach to confronting injustice does not require aggression or impulsive outbursts. In fact, Marcus Aurelius would advise against reacting with anger or hostility. Instead, he would encourage us to use reason, calmness, and wisdom in our response. Stoicism teaches that it is not the act of speaking out that matters most. It is the manner in which we do it. Speak the truth, but speak it with dignity, humility, and respect. A perfect example of this can be seen in the history of Stoic philosophers. In ancient Rome, the philosopher Epictetus was a slave who had every reason to resent the system that kept him oppressed. Yet, he did not lash out with anger or bitterness. Instead, he used his wisdom to transform his personal suffering into strength, teaching others the importance of maintaining integrity, regardless of external circumstances. Epictetus believed that it was our internal freedom, our ability to control our emotions and thoughts, that determined our actions, not the injustices of the outside world. This mindset extends beyond personal encounters with injustice. It also applies to systemic wrongs in society. When we witness policies that perpetuate inequality, discrimination, or suffering, the Stoic path compels us to speak up. A Stoic will act not from a place of righteous indignation, but from a place of moral responsibility. Stoicism teaches that it is not enough to be virtuous in private. We must bring our virtue into the world, confronting systemic injustices with calm determination. The call to speak out against injustice is not an invitation to start fights or to argue for the sake of winning. It is an invitation to show the world that truth, fairness, and integrity matter. It is about standing firm in our beliefs and acting according to the virtues we hold dear. As Marcus Aurelius said, "What is not good for the beehive cannot be good for the bees." If we are to live in a just world, it is up to each of us to ensure that we act with integrity when injustice is present. Remaining silent in the face of injustice is the path of least resistance, but it is not the path of strength. In fact, silence in such situations is a betrayal of everything the Stoic philosophy stands for. It is easy to avoid conflict, but true strength lies in confronting what is wrong, not just for the sake of others, but for the sake of our own character. When you speak out, you do not just change the immediate situation, you are cultivating your own sense of moral courage. You are forging your inner strength, showing that you are unafraid to stand up for what is right. Every time you take action in the face of injustice, you reinforce your own integrity, your own sense of honor, and your own virtue. So, when you witness injustice, whether in the form of a personal slight or a larger societal wrong, do not remain silent. Speak up. Do so with the calmness, wisdom, and courage of a Stoic. Let your actions be a testament to your commitment to truth and fairness. The world may not always change immediately, but your voice will resonate, and you will have lived in accordance with the highest virtues. Number 2. When your values are being compromised. We all have a set of core values, those beliefs and principles that define who we are. These values can be the difference between a meaningful, honorable life and one filled with regret. Yet, in the hustle and bustle of life, it's easy to find ourselves in situations where our values are being eroded or compromised, whether subtly or overtly. It is in these moments that silence becomes our greatest enemy. Imagine for a moment that you are working in an environment where the values of honesty, integrity, and fairness are gradually being replaced by shortcuts, lies, and manipulation. Perhaps you find yourself in a situation where you are encouraged, directly or indirectly, to betray your own principles to get ahead or avoid conflict. The temptation to stay silent, to say nothing, is strong. After all, speaking out might bring trouble. It might disrupt the status quo. Yet this is precisely the moment when silence is the most dangerous. Stoicism teaches us that our virtue is the only true good. Everything else, from wealth to fame, is neither good nor bad in itself. It is how we engage with these things that defines their impact on us. According to Epictetus, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This reaction, the choice of how we respond to external circumstances, is directly tied to our values. If we allow our values to be compromised without saying a word, we are betraying our very essence. This is where the Stoic demands more of himself. Silence is not strength in this context. Inaction is cowardice. In a world filled with distractions and temptations, it requires tremendous fortitude to stand firm when your principles are being challenged. Marcus Aurelius emphasized the importance of maintaining our character and inner resolve when he said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." When faced with situations that challenge our values, we must not look away. We must confront the obstacle head-on with reason and wisdom. Think of the Stoic philosophers themselves, who lived in times of immense political and social turbulence. They did not cower or bend to the pressures of the ruling classes or societal norms. Instead, they stood firm in their convictions. Consider Socrates, who faced execution for questioning the status quo and challenging the beliefs of his fellow Athenians. He did not remain silent when his values were at stake. He chose to defend his beliefs at the cost of his life. "The unexamined life is not worth living," Socrates said. His commitment to his values transcended his own survival. This is the Stoic way. Honor, integrity, and wisdom come before self-interest. When our values are compromised, we must speak up, not out of anger, but out of love for what is right. We speak to defend our own sense of self-worth and to ensure that we do not become complicit in what is wrong. The Stoic does not shy away from uncomfortable truths, but instead uses them as opportunities for growth. It is a test of character to remain silent when the very principles that make us who we are being undermined. But how do we find the strength to speak up in these situations? First, we remind ourselves that our values are non-negotiable. The Stoic does not bend in the face of pressure, they stand firm. We also recognize that speaking out does not mean losing our composure. We do not need to shout or act impulsively. We must learn to use wisdom, and even the most difficult conversations can be approached calmly and rationally. The act of standing firm is a display of inner strength, a strength that transcends the physical and manifests through our words and actions. It's also important to note that speaking out in these moments may not always lead to immediate success. Our values may be met with resistance, and we may face backlash. However, the Stoic understands that the outcome is not what defines us. Our actions, guided by virtue and reason, are what matter most. By speaking up, we align ourselves with our higher purpose and create a life of meaning, one where our values are lived and expressed through every decision we make. A Stoic life is one of integrity, and integrity cannot coexist with silence in the face of moral decay. We must rise above the temptation, conform, and choose, instead, the difficult but rewarding path of virtue. The strength to do so comes not from our external circumstances, but from our internal resolve. It is within us to choose to be the person who upholds their values, no matter the cost. In summary, when your values are under threat, whether in the workplace, in relationships, or in society at large, silence is not an option. To remain silent is to betray your own soul. Speak up and let your actions reflect your commitment to the principles you hold dear. In doing so, you are not just defending your values, you are shaping your character and demonstrating your commitment to a life of integrity. Number 3, when you are witnessing injustice or cruelty, there are few things that challenge a person's soul more than witnessing injustice or cruelty. Whether it's in the form of oppression, discrimination, or even casual acts of meanness, these moments have a profound effect on us. A Stoic, however, does not sit idly by, watching others suffer or witnessing the erosion of justice. For them, silence in these moments is not a choice, it is a failure of character. The world we live in is filled with inequality, prejudice, and corruption. Often these actions are so ingrained in the fabric of society that many see them as normal. When we witness these wrongs, the natural reaction might be to turn away, to avoid confrontation, or to assume that speaking out will make no difference. But here, the Stoic path demands that we do the opposite. A Stoic is someone who not only acts with virtue, but inspires virtue in others. This cannot be done through silence. It is not enough to simply know what is right. One must act upon it. This is where many falter, for the instinct to protect oneself often outweighs the moral obligation to stand up against wrong. The Stoic, however, is not governed by fear or the desire for personal comfort. As Epictetus said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. When we witness injustice, we are called to act, not out of anger or vengeance, but from a place of reason and compassion. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often writes about the importance of understanding the actions of others. He advises us to practice the ability to see things from the perspective of others, even when we disagree with their actions. Yet, this understanding does not mean we become passive in the face of wrongdoing. Rather, it empowers us to address the situation with calm and conviction, guided by reason, not emotion. We must remember that the Stoic ideal is not about living in a world free of conflict. In fact, the Stoic accepts that the world will often be harsh, unfair, and unjust. However, their response to it is what sets them apart. They do not shy away from confronting the harshness of the world, but instead face it with an unshakable commitment to justice and compassion. When we witness cruelty, whether directed towards others or ourselves, it is our duty to speak up. To remain silent in the face of abuse, discrimination, or any form of injustice is to become complicit. Even more than that, silence in the face of injustice feeds the very forces we wish to oppose. Each time we choose silence over action, we tacitly support the status quo, allowing cruelty to persist unchallenged. However, it's important to understand that confronting injustice does not always mean launching into a battle or fighting in a way that leads to chaos. The Stoic approach to confronting injustice is one of calm, deliberate action. Sometimes it means simply speaking up, calling out wrongs in a clear, rational manner. It may also mean standing in solidarity with those who are oppressed, offering them our support and creating a community of virtue in which justice thrives. The Stoic mindset also recognizes that we cannot control how others will respond to our actions. We may face resistance or even punishment for standing up against wrongs. This is a hard truth. But the Stoic does not measure success by external outcomes. Instead, they measure success by the alignment of their actions with their values. "What does not kill me makes me stronger," said Nietzsche, echoing the Stoic belief that adversity is a test, not a defeat. When we face adversity in the fight against injustice, we grow stronger in our convictions. So, how does one cultivate the strength to speak up in such difficult situations? First, we must reflect on our personal values and be clear about what we stand for. The Stoic understands that their actions are an expression of their inner character. They are not swayed by public opinion or fear of reprisal. The commitment to justice, kindness, and fairness remains unwavering. Second, we must remember that silence can sometimes perpetuate the problem. To stand in silence is to align with the injustice. Silence may seem like a safe choice, but the Stoic understands that true safety lies in virtue, not in passivity. The Stoic does not avoid discomfort, but faces it with courage and reason. They act not because they are certain of a victory, but because they know that righteousness is not a matter of outcome. It is a matter of duty. Finally, the Stoic response to injustice is guided by compassion. We are not fighting for our own benefit or glory. We are fighting for something greater: justice, equality, and the protection of those who cannot defend themselves. When we speak out, we do so not with a desire to defeat others, but to foster a world where virtue reigns and wrongdoers are held accountable. In conclusion, when you witness injustice or cruelty, whether in the form of exploitation, harassment, or discrimination, it is not enough to stay silent. The Stoic does not shy away from confrontation, but faces these challenges with a calm heart and a resolute mind. Silence in the face of injustice is not strength, it is weakness. By speaking up, we not only help those in need, but we also shape our own character, growing closer to the ideal of the Stoic, a person who embodies virtue, no matter the circumstance. Number 4. When you are compromising your integrity for comfort. There are moments in life when we are faced with the temptation to compromise our values for the sake of convenience or comfort. It might seem harmless at first, agreeing to a small lie, staying silent when we should speak, or accepting a situation that goes against our principles because it's easier. However, for a Stoic, compromising their integrity, no matter how small the situation, is a matter of great consequence. It is one of the rare instances where silence is a failure of the highest order. Our values and integrity form the foundation of our character. To live in accordance with virtue is the Stoic path. As Marcus Aurelius states, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. In this, he urges us to act with integrity at all times, regardless of external circumstances. There is no room for dishonesty, deceit, or compromise in a life that strives for wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. When we compromise our integrity for comfort, we not only lose a part of our true self, but we also set a dangerous precedent. By allowing our values to bend under the weight of comfort, we train ourselves to weaken our resolve. The next time we face a similar challenge, we will be more likely to compromise again, and soon we will find that our character has eroded away, bit by bit. The Stoic, however, recognizes this danger and stands firm in their commitment to virtue. The price of comfort is too high if it means losing the essence of who we are. The first step towards maintaining your integrity is self-awareness. The Stoic practices mindfulness and reflection, constantly evaluating their actions and thoughts. Through this self-examination, they are able to identify moments when they may be tempted to compromise. In such instances, they remind themselves of their purpose and their commitment to living according to virtue. Integrity is not something that can be measured by external success or failure. It is about being true to oneself, regardless of the outcome. To sacrifice this for fleeting comfort is to lose something irreplaceable. The second step is to remember that the pursuit of comfort is ultimately a lie. Comfort, in this context, is not true peace. It is the avoidance of discomfort, the rejection of responsibility, and the escape from truth. But the Stoic knows that growth comes through discomfort, and there is no virtue in avoiding challenges. Every time we compromise our integrity for comfort, we are abandoning our potential to grow. It is through facing challenges head-on and remaining steadfast in our values that we find true inner peace. This is not to say that comfort itself is inherently bad, but the Stoic understands that it is a fleeting and superficial pursuit. Comfort should never come at the expense of integrity or virtue. As Seneca said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." The pursuit of self-mastery is the Stoic goal, and this cannot be achieved by choosing comfort over virtue. The Stoic also understands that it is natural to want to avoid discomfort. The desire for comfort is part of being human. However, the Stoic does not allow this desire to rule over them. Instead, they use their rationality to determine what is truly beneficial. They know that short-term comfort may feel good, but it is the long-term pursuit of virtue that brings true fulfillment. The Stoic response to discomfort is not avoidance, but acceptance and control. They see discomfort not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity to grow and strengthen their character. When faced with a situation that tests your integrity, remember the wisdom of the Stoics. Do not remain silent in these moments. Speak up for your values, act in accordance with your principles, and stand firm in the face of temptation. Your integrity is the bedrock of your character, and once it is compromised, it becomes harder to regain. As the Stoics would say, we are defined not by what happens to us, but by how we respond to it. It's crucial to understand that the Stoic approach to maintaining integrity is not about moral superiority or arrogance. It's about aligning ourselves with nature, with virtue, and with our true purpose. It's about living a life that is authentic, meaningful, and congruent with our highest values. To compromise on that for the sake of comfort is to dishonor ourselves and the very ideals we seek to embody. The final takeaway is this: silence, in these moments of compromising integrity, is not only a failure to act, it is a betrayal of your own character. The Stoic does not allow comfort to erode their sense of self. They speak and act in ways that are true to their inner values, regardless of external pressures. In doing so, they maintain the strength of their character, and ultimately, they find true peace in knowing that they have lived a life of virtue, not one of convenience. Number 5, when you are witnessing injustice. Injustice stirs us all to our core. The Stoic does not remain silent when faced with it. Silence is a passive acceptance, and Stoicism teaches us to never passively accept what goes against virtue. Even when we cannot change the world around us, we can control how we respond. The Stoic acts with wisdom and courage, even in the face of injustice, knowing that true virtue is not about avoiding discomfort, but about confronting it with strength. When we stand in silence as injustice unfolds before us, we are complicit in its perpetuation. In this sense, silence becomes an endorsement of that which is wrong. Every injustice left unchecked becomes a wound to our collective humanity. And as a Stoic, your duty is to speak out against it. Remember, our voice is a tool, a weapon that, when used correctly, can bring about positive change. Consider the words of Epictetus, who urged us to be mindful of our actions and words. What is it that is causing you to be disturbed? It is not what happens to you, but how you choose to respond to what happens that matters. Injustice is a reality we cannot always control, but our response to it lies entirely in our hands. Stoicism teaches us that it is our moral duty to act in alignment with virtue, regardless of the situation. This is why silence in the face of injustice is never the Stoic's response. We must speak, act, and, when necessary, confront the wrong. To walk the Stoic path is not to be silent in the face of all adversity, but to act with wisdom, courage, and virtue when the moment calls for it. The Stoic does not allow destructive behavior to continue unchallenged, nor do they accept injustice without responding. Silence may sometimes be a sign of inner peace, but at other times, it is a sign of complacency. In every moment, ask yourself, is my silence preserving virtue, or is it allowing wrong to flourish unchecked? Remember, Stoicism is not about turning away from the world. It's about confronting it with the right mindset, the right actions, and the right intentions. We speak when we must, we act when we must, and we remain true to our values even when silence seems like the easier path. As we close, think about those moments where silence has held you back in life, where speaking out could have made a difference. The next time you face such a moment, remember, the Stoic does not remain silent for the sake of comfort. The Stoic speaks and acts to honor virtue, to uphold justice, and to ensure that their actions align with the greater good. You have that power within you too. Now, go forth with the courage to speak when silence would serve you poorly. Use your voice to uplift, challenge, and change the course of your destiny. Stay true to your principles, and remember, as Marcus Aurelius wrote, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Silence can sometimes be a retreat. But when it's time to speak up, let the words that leave your mouth reflect the strength of your soul. When you speak from a place of virtue, you are not only strengthening your own character, you are fortifying the world around you. Before we end, I want you to take a moment to reflect on what you've just heard. Have these ideas sparked something in you? Have they lit a fire within, urging you to act with more strength, courage, and wisdom? If so, then show your support for this channel by giving this video a like and sharing it with those who may need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to The Modern Stoic and turn on notifications so you never miss another empowering message. And if these words resonated with you, drop a comment below, letting us know how you plan to implement Stoic teachings in your life today. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and who knows, your comment might inspire others to take action as well. Thank you for watching, and remember, your voice is one of your most powerful tools. Use it wisely.